All right, so today we have an interesting little segment. Um, I've gone to Dr. Ghavami for several things over the years. I'm not going to say what, uh, what, but mostly what's important, well, I trust the guy, so that's why I'm sitting here. I want to ask you about plastic surgery in Los Angeles and the history of it, and I want to ask you about how it's changed over the years and how it's different than what it was like in the 1980s versus what it is today. What is the main difference from what it used to be, number one, and number two, how does social media influence that today?
Okay, those are excellent questions. Thanks, Josh. You've been in LA, I think your whole life, right? So you've kind of you've seen it evolve. And I grew up here. I went away for med school and everything, but ever since I was young, back then, we didn't have TMZ, we didn't have Daily Mail, we didn't have social media. So every now and then you would see, I wouldn't even trust the Inquirer, but even like just People magazine, or sometimes the LA Times, and sometimes you would see a segment on Entertainment Tonight or something where you'd see Zsa Zsa Gabor being wheeled out, in some private parking lot, or you'd see in the alley someone wrapped around and being wheeled out, some mysterious black and white photo of them like that. And for me, wanting to be a plastic surgeon, it was so intriguing.
Yeah.
Because there was so much mystery. So I would say today there's still mystery, because if you answer the question to have you had this or that done definitively, the topic's done. There's no more to talk about. When you leave it up in the air and you do my motto, which is keep them guessing, then you stay relevant, because people are constantly debating back and forth, so you're a topic of conversation. So I would say there's still mystery, but right now I think more and more celebrities are being more open about it. But there's a lot of celebrities that weren't open about it, and I actually don't mind that. I like being people's secret, because it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Sometimes my post-ops are looking at red carpet and screenshotting the red carpet or a picture of them on a cover of a magazine. And sometimes I'll actually save that in their file as their post-op follow-up period, because I haven't seen them for a year or two. And I know other surgeons that do that too. And one of the things people don't know is that plastic surgery in Hollywood have been like this since day one. Marilyn Monroe had a chin implant. It was rumored that she had a breast augmentation as well in her later years. Some of the male celebrities, like John Wayne, the most manly man of all.
Yeah, what did he do?
He did an eyelid lift, and
Really?
it was rumored that he did a mini facelift.
That's unusual.
Yeah, so men were doing it too, but men, it was even more secretive, and they would pay people off to not talk about it.
Right.
And a lot of times, and I used to have this happen more in my earlier career than now, but Saturday, Sunday surgeries is not uncommon, because there's not many people in the building, there's no chance of paparazzi. And let's face it, a lot of paparazzi, honestly, these days are phone calls and arrangements. They're not like true paparazzi where they're stalking you.
Right.
It's almost an arranged situation. But situations like Zsa Zsa Gabor, when I'm looking back, I wonder if that was arranged or whether that was actually organically
Probably
surprised.
not, because plastic surgery is not something that I think that they wanted to be caught. Like, I don't think that's something you ever really want. I mean, like, yeah, it's one thing if you call a restaurant ahead of time and they're expecting you, but like, I
but
don't
not
think
coming out of Dr. Ghavami's office.
Yeah, I don't know if that's something that Josh really wanted, but maybe like a house man tipped off somebody, and then
possibly
that's probably how.
And that's when Hollywood was more like, honestly, more intrigue.
Yeah,
I kind of liked it growing up in an era where I didn't know what John Ritter, where he went for coffee. I didn't, now we know that so and so comes out with Starbucks, or like so and so went to Gelson's, or like they shopped at Mrs. Gooch's back in the day, which is pre Whole Foods.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So me and you you're a lot younger than me, but we kind of are in the same era relatively, so we know that heyday. And one of my things that got me interested in plastic surgery was actually looking at like newspapers, and like I went with my mom to a rhinoplasty appointment with this guy named Maury Parks back in the day.
Maury Parks was the first guy who did he did my mom's nose.
There you have it.
He was the nose guy in Beverly Hills.
It was him, Frank Kamer, and not much else.
Dr. Kamer, and then later maybe Dr. Tiersten, or maybe one of those guys.
Yeah, it was and Hofflin and
Hofflin. Yeah, that was.
So there's a lot of history in Hollywood and plastic surgery, and it really literally is here. There's a few stories maybe in Miami or Park Avenue, but a lot of the the celebrity A-list actors in Hollywood life, reality stars to Instagram models now, and to everybody, it's become a cornucopia. What's cool now, though, is because we're in this kind of woke period and we're in 2022, I think the young women and the people of in society are almost demanding and hoping for celebrities to be more open, because now we're in a period where we don't want young girls and people to feel bad about themselves, to think that these celebrities are superhuman and built out of some privileged genetic makeup that no one else had, and they're unlucky to have it, and they're nowhere close to it. But rather, they have good dermatologists, good skincare, they work out, they have trainers, they have good lighting, good makeup artists, and a really good secret plastic surgeon. And that is a welcome thing in society now, whereas before, because it was secretive where you went for dinner, where you went for coffee, where you shopped, we weren't always seeing glimpses of everything. Even like Princess Diana, we would see her here and there, but we didn't know everything she did.
Yeah.
You know, so that secrecy is still there, but this openness that they have about some of the things they do, I think is welcomed by society right now, because we all kind of want to see that we're all human beings trying to figure things out, and there's not one human being that's necessarily more gifted and privileged by birth than the other.
Yeah. I've never been really secret about it. Like, I've done things over the years, and like, you know, the goal I've always said is just do a little bit at a time instead of a full thing. And that's why, like, I don't know, I got my first nose job when I was 17 or 16 or something like that. They can see something's different, but they don't know what it is. That's like,
I mean, plastic surgery should never be not keep them guessing. That's how I've always felt it to
keep
be.
them guessing.
So even if I do breast augmentation, I talk people out of huge implants. I talk people out of these huge exaggerated butts that I never made buttocks like that. The trend that they're talking about now is one that I always did since day one. And I happen to be one of the first that ever even did buttock surgery in Los Angeles. I was one of a handful back in 2008 or 7 when none of this was around. Instagram wasn't around. It was a whole different era. And now you're seeing left and right people, you know, I see so many more buttocks now that are obviously not real out there than I used to 5-6 years ago.
Right.
So the game has changed a lot. One thing that I love is the return of the facelift. When a facelift now performed by an average surgeon is better than the best facelifts 20, 30 years ago.
Well, it was just so, I mean, it was a look back. Like, I remember all these like little old ladies I used to grow up with, and I'd see them, and it was just that look.
Because they
I call it spin cycled.
Exactly, or like wind tunnel.
Yeah.
So it's actually called a lateral sweep. It's actually a deformity we talk about in our textbooks and scientific meetings. What happened was that people relied on the skin as the vehicle to pull. And if skin was that strong, you wouldn't need a facelift in the first place. It's the deep tissue and the deep plane philosophy now where you just let the skin redrape naturally over. So whether it's facelift, breast, and some people are doing, instead of implants, fat transfers now, where not only do they look more natural, but they feel more natural. And when I do a breast augmentation with implant, I go under the muscle and really try to create a teardrop shape. If I do a chin implant or anything like that, I do it not exaggerated. If I do buttock fat transfer, it's to the point where, you know, even the most jealous friend going to Cabo for the weekend sees that person and they're wondering, do they have a good trainer or did they get surgery? So for me, that's how plastic surgery should always have been.
Yeah.
So there's a secrecy in the naturalness now. There's a little less secrecy in the fact that celebrities are being a little more open to it, so their public doesn't feel so bad about themselves. But I think plastic surgery should always be a little secretive. I think it's nice to have mystery in the people that you watch on screen and that you see, that you follow, and you know, or admire or aspire to. Like, you don't want to necessarily know every single thing they do to be there. And that was kind of why celebrity was more celebrity back in the era we grew up, you know, when we're seeing those mysteries. Like, seeing right now somebody being wheeled out from their doctor's office wrapped up would be a cool image, but it wouldn't be that shocking like it was when we saw Zsa Zsa Gabor come out, operated by, I think, the Williams brothers. There were 2 brothers that did a lot of surgery back then too. And interestingly, there were some surgeons back in the day in Palm Springs that some celebrities would go to Palm Springs so they could recover there and be away from Hollywood and no paparazzi in sight.
Yeah. No,
It was rumored that's where Marilyn Monroe had her surgery.
That's interesting. I mean, it would make sense to recover there. There's not a lot of doctors in Palm Springs anymore.
There's not too many, but as you know, you can tell me, I don't know what real estate's like there, but there's some cool, mid-century homes there. I wouldn't mind recovering in one of those with a nice
Is it
pool.
possible, like, if let's just say a woman in her like 60s in like the 80s had their face done and it had that,
To
pulled
reverse
back
it?
look. If they were in their 80s today and they wanted to get their face done again 20 years later, could you reverse it?
It wouldn't be a reversal, it would be kind of like a remodel of a home again. So I would do fat transfer first to revolumize and redistribute three-dimensionally the natural contours that haven't been that were flattened out and stretched. And then I would re-drape the tissue in 4 to 5 directions rather than one. And that's how you do a natural facelift. You're three-dimensionally augmenting naturally, and then the skin's re-draping and tented over that three-dimensional augmentation in multiple directions rather than pulled one direction. And that's how you do a natural facelift. And that's how you not reverse, but correct a tight or overly tightened face with more skin pull, old school techniques.
Right.
Yeah. And one of the things that we have now that we didn't back then too is all the non-invasive technology. The radio frequency, the lasers, they're very advanced. And there's some you can do literally 1 to 2 days before a red carpet event or even before a shoot that just tightens you for about a week or two, where it just delivers some heat energy and you just feel glowing and refreshed before with no downtime. So there's minimal to no downtime, really highly effective technologies now.
Yeah.
So the game has changed. It's an interesting topic.
Yeah.
And one thing that's interesting about my practice, I was lucky enough, the surgery suite upstairs that I acquired in 2013, one of the people that used to operate there was Franklin Ashley. And Franklin Ashley was notorious in Hollywood. He was the first chairman of plastic surgery at UCLA.
Right.
And he was rumored to have worked on Nancy Reagan, Phyllis Diller, like a lot of these old-time celebrities, but not necessarily just pulling faces, but he would inject silicone. So he was on the right track with philosophy that you need to three-dimensionally augment faces rather than just pull. He just didn't have the advent of fat transfer to do it. He had silicone injections.
Right.
So he was doing a lot of silicone injections in these people, but he was onto the right track. Now we just do it with natural fat grafting.
Right, exactly.
So he was kind of ahead of his time, and I have all his instruments and I don't use them, and they say in his writing, Franklin Ashley, they're inscribed.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of create a little kind of shrine thing up there with that. So there's a lot of history just in this building in plastic surgery.
No, I know. All right, well, that was some very good information that I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Well, thanks,
now you know
folks.
even more about Hollywood, plastic surgery, and where we're at now. Josh, thank you so much for the
My
interest
pleasure,
you have in
and
this
thanks
topic.
for letting me
I
come
love
in.
what I do. You love what you do.
Yeah, well, there's
Thank
a
you
lot
so
of
much.
overlap.
Appreciate it.